All right, everyone, you made it. It's day 7 of the 28-day Get Hired Challenge. I'm Alyssa Miller, and we've got more great content coming for you. We're 1 week into this thing, and that means today we are talking about cybersecurity career progressions. Let's dig in. Everyone, welcome to day 7 of the 28-day Get Hired Challenge. I'm Alyssa Miller, and congratulations, you made it through the first week. How many of you have been here each and every day this week? If you haven't, that's okay. The first 6 days are out there, but it's day 7, and today, as I promised, we are talking about your cybersecurity career progression. Career progressions are something that we kind of struggle with in cybersecurity, to be quite honest. There is no good roadmap. For a lot of different industries, you can there's usually a pretty clear progression of how you go from, your first job to maybe that 10th job or something down the road. But when we look at cybersecurity, I think partially just, maybe it's the youth of this particular industry, but there's not a good career progression. There's definitely not a good map that says, here's how you go from one step to the next. And you know what? Every company is different. Every organization is different. A lot of people have tried to map this out, but we don't really have a good, generally accepted practice. So what we're going to talk about today is just some of the different levels, if you will, that you can kind of go through in a general sense in your cybersecurity career journey. And it all begins with that ever elusive entry-level role. This is one that, believe it or not, is actually kind of the subject of some level of controversy, because you're going to find those people in the industry who are going to tell you that there is no such thing as an entry-level role in cybersecurity. You see, these people, they believe that, you've got to have done your time in either, an IT role of some fashion or some other adjacent role. And I'm not going to lie, that can be super helpful. For me, I came from a programming background, and so I was a programmer for almost a decade before I got into cybersecurity as a profession, my first job as a pen tester. But the world has changed a lot since then. And what you find more often than not is the people who are telling you that you've got to be a network administrator or be a developer or, you have to have done this or that. They're projecting their own past on you. And that's not the reality anymore. But let's talk about entry level. A lot of times when we talk entry level, people start to think about roles like SOC analyst. Okay? That is, if there's one job that I have seen people recommend more often than not to people trying to get into a cybersecurity career as their first step, I hear that all the time. And you know what? It is a natural first step for a lot of people. It does work. Because here's the thing with a SOC analyst. A lot of what you're doing are very kind of repetitive tasks, okay? And they can be, taught to, you're taking alerts and you're following a process, and that process usually has to do with monitoring for things that are going to occur, then reporting those things to somebody else and moving on. Maybe there's some level of analysis as you grow in that career, but that's why people say, yeah, maybe this is a good place to start. And I don't argue that. That's a great one. But there are a lot of other places you can start too. There are a lot of organizations now, a growing number, who are starting to create incubator programs where you can come in as an associate in many different spaces. So one of my former employers, we had associate security professionals who came in, and you know what? They worked in a security assessment role. They did a very, what I would call like a high-level security assessment, very automated and very structured with process. So it was something that they could be onboarded to easily, and they could start to learn a lot, not just about cybersecurity, but about how to talk about cybersecurity with customers. So it was a great fit. But that was a role that had nothing to do with being in a security operations center. It was completely separate. When I worked in consulting, we did this with our pen testers. We actually had associate pen testing roles. And so you can go on, you can look, and you can find some of these positions. Now, I'm not going to lie. They are some of the hardest to find, and I think that's why people struggle when they're trying to get into a cybersecurity position. But there are other roles as well. When you look for terms like junior or associate, those are indicators right away they're probably looking for somebody with lesser time. You might see those in terms of vulnerability analysis. And that's usually someone working in vulnerability management. You might see it in a GRC role where they're looking for somebody who can handle maybe more of a repetitive process task of doing third-party questionnaires or something like that. There are a lot of options for you in that entry-level space. Any one of them gets you into a role where you're dealing with cybersecurity concepts on a daily basis. That's a good role to be in for starting your cybersecurity career. Now, as you move on in your career progression, what you're going to see is you have some options. You'll start to move into more of those senior roles where now you start to take on, as a senior pen tester, for instance, you're probably doing tests of different applications and different systems on your own. And you might even be leading a team in some cases. And so as you slowly progress from maybe junior or associate up to just a standard security analyst or security engineer role, then you may become a senior security engineer, and that might feed into even a lead or a principal security engineer, security analyst, things like that. And so this is where now you've built up enough experience and skill set that you're not considered obviously entry level anymore. You're considered an experienced professional, and you may grow in that role, still very focused on the technical aspects. Now, the question comes in, where do we go from here? And this is where things get a little more complex. So you've put in 5, maybe 7 years, maybe even more, and you're in a senior principal level role. You've got to make a decision. Now, a lot of people assume that your next step from there is management. But that's not the only option. And in fact, there's a lot of people who have no desire to go into management. You see, management is not this natural next stepping stone from a senior role, okay? Management comes with its own skills, its own set of responsibilities and things that leverage a very different skill set than you've been doing maybe in that senior role where you were hands-on with technology every day. You were down in the trenches, some people say, right? When you get into management, now you have to start developing true leadership skills. You start to develop more of a sense of some business acumen. And for a lot of people, that might not be where you want to go. So what do you do if you're in a senior role and you want to keep progressing? Well, what we have seen grow in the industry is this idea of architect roles. These are those roles where now you're doing more than just working in the technology, but you're thinking strategically about what you're going to build. You're designing whole security infrastructure and how that's going to work. You might be an application security architect. You might be working in, say, DevOps and doing things and defining what your cloud infrastructure looks like as far as how it incorporates security technologies. That's what we look for in architects. And architects, a lot of time, that's a very high-paying role. And we're usually looking for somebody with some breadth of knowledge where they've seen a few different sides of the security space. So maybe they did work in digital forensics for a while, and then they got into, say, maybe like IAM, or they did some security operations for a while or something like that, because we're looking for someone who can look at all those different aspects of cybersecurity and draw them together to build an overall comprehensive architecture. So you do have that option as well. But so keep that in mind. That is something that's continuing to grow in the cybersecurity community. We're seeing more and more of that, and indeed, I think there's a lot of people who recognize we need to further improve that technical track, if you will, where people go when they want to stay hands-on with technology, not move into a management role. Now, I said management comes with its own skill set, and that's really because now you're managing people. You're trying to not just worry about the day-to-day tactical of, are we getting all these tasks done, but how do you manage a team? How do you keep them working together? How do you make sure that each person on the team is advancing their career, that they're growing and developing and progressing through their own journey? That's what comes in with management. And of course, as you go into management, you start to move up. You start at a manager level, maybe at a lead level. In some places, a team lead is considered management. But then you might get into manager, then senior manager. Senior manager feeds to director, and it's usually senior manager and director level where now you're managing other managers. And then you have senior directors. Sometimes there's managing director, which is above senior director. And these are just, as you grow, each level up, you have, those levels that you were in that now report to you. So a senior director or a managing director probably has other directors that report to them. And then you get into the vice presidents and the senior vice presidents and on up until you hit that executive level. And then at the executive level, now we're talking like our CISOs, right? And a lot of times senior vice presidents and such will fit in there, or executive vice presidents. You don't see a lot of executive vice president, by the way, in terms of cybersecurity. And that's a whole other conversation. But the thing to understand, as you move up in management, as you get into director level, VP level, and you start getting into that executive suite, now that business side of things becomes critically more important. I'm a CISO, and I'll tell you, half of my time isn't spent really thinking about cybersecurity at all. I'm thinking about budgeting. I'm thinking about capital budgets and my OpEx budget. How do I reconcile that together? What costs are capitalizable? How can I better support my company's focus on EBITDA so that we're showing, and that you can look that term up, or we can talk about that another time. But all of these business concepts, and in fact, people have asked me, hey, if I want to get into upper levels of cybersecurity management, what's the skill I should work to build? And I'll tell them more often than not, you need to build those MBA skills. I'm not saying go out and get an MBA, but definitely go out and learn about the business, because you're going to have to be able to talk to your chief financial officer. You're going to need to be able to talk to your chief human resources officer. You're going to need to be able to talk to the CIO, to the CEO, to the board. And you're going to need to be able to understand what they think about on a daily basis. And that's the key when you get in those executive roles, is now it's all about, how can I take a cybersecurity strategy that I'm responsible for? I own the strategy for my whole company and how we're going to address cybersecurity. But then I have to be able to translate that and communicate that to the rest of the executive leadership team and the board in a way that's meaningful for them. And so that is a very different skill set. So I know there's a lot of people when they get started in cybersecurity, they're like, yeah, my eventual goal is I want to be a CISO someday. And yet when they start to find out what being a CISO is really all about, it kind of loses its luster. So that's not me trying to dissuade anybody from that goal. I think it's a great goal. Obviously, it's what I'm doing now. But understand that for not everybody is that the right approach. For some people, you may just want to stay connected with technology and be working and growing in that space. And we have that for our architects and so forth. And you can always keep growing there too. So we're going to talk in future episodes about how you start to figure out what your interests are and where to start and how you sort of plan your journey. But this should set the foundation for you to kind of understand some of the areas you might want to work through and where you may want to go in the future. So I want to hear from you. I'm giving away a book every day. You know that. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think is a goal for you? Where do you want to see your career go to? Do you think you're more on that management and executive track? Do you think you want to stick more to the technology for your full career? Or are you unsure? And what are some of the things you're thinking about there? Tell me down in the comments, and we'll select one random commenter, and you'll win a free copy of my book, Cybersecurity Career Guide. Also, a reminder that Manning Publications, all this month, 35% off all titles. All you have to do is go to their website, manning.com, enter that discount code 28days CHL Miller, or easier, you can go to that link there, mng.bz/JMGP. Don't ask me where that came from, but hey, URL shorteners, right? Or grab your cell phone, scan that QR code, you can visit it. That'll take you right to the site with the code entered. Any one of those will get you 35% off any Manning title. That's day 7. We've got 3 more weeks of our 28-day Get Hired Challenge, and I'm going to be back here every single day because I want to help get you hired in cybersecurity.